Welcome to the InStory Show. I'm Devorah Spilman, your host, and this season is Summer, How Empaths Do It. How do we turn our sensitivities into our strengths? And today I am thrilled to welcome Elizabeth Evans. Hi, Elizabeth.
Hello.
So before we dive in, I'm going to read a little bit about Elizabeth. Elizabeth is a wellness coach and owner of Health Revolution Training. After she survived the recent devastating Camp Fire in Northern California last November, which wiped out the entire town of Paradise, California, and Elizabeth's home as well, she began holding healing circles. Her service to the community is to assist and hold the space for people to heal after such a crisis and feel whole again. Oh my gosh. Elizabeth, thank you so much for everything you do and for coming back on to the InStory Show. And I should tell all of you that Elizabeth is part of the InStory Way group, and I interviewed her once before, and it was, I think, not too long after the fire, and she was super brave to come on and talk about it. And Elizabeth, thank you for coming back, and I want you to Elizabeth is part of the InStory experts, meaning she's part of my InStory Way group and has worked since the time of the fire to take this powerful work she does with healing wisdom and bring it to her community and then out into the world more. So Elizabeth, maybe start a little bit by just giving us an update on what's happening with you and how are you recovering after the fire, and how are you helping others to get back up after something so devastating?
Thank you, Devorah. It's so good to be here, and I feel so much stronger this time around. I really reached out to the community after the fire. It helped me actually to focus on other people instead of just my own feelings of loss. And I knew that getting together with community is a real important part of healing. And sometimes we want to isolate ourselves and grieve alone, but really it is a group process that helps speed up the healing. And I wanted to offer that to the community through healing circles in my new office. I had just opened up a month before the fire. So I was really happy to come into my office and see some familiar pieces of furniture that survived the fire and open it to people to come. And people immediately felt a real warm sense of welcoming into my new office space that I could hold circles. And the training that I received going through, working through healing through circles at a cancer help program in Northern California. I'd worked there for 25 years with people going through cancer, and the power of circles and healing was really evident there. And so I could transfer that into my own community. And after the fire, a lot of people experienced PTSD, grief, depression, all the horrible things going through a crisis that they had no feeling of support. So quite a few people gravitated towards me individually for sessions, as well as the healing circles. So I did ask a wonderful woman who volunteered her time to teach EFT or tapping to come. She offered a free session for each of my healing circles, and it was amazing to watch the people really get a lot out of it, not only from their inner work, but also sharing with the group what they got out of it. And it was really fantastic to see that method was reaching a level that you can't even explain. And one woman walked in with just horrible grief on her face, and she walked out feeling light and a sense of hope. And that really motivated me to do more healing circles. And that's really what my focus is turning towards, is how I can be more effective with groups of people as well as individuals to bring that community support even more for just anybody going through crisis, not just after the campfire in the community, but or going through cancer. But both of those are very similar in that it's a before and after. You can kind of peg where your life was before and where it is after. And for me, that was actually a turning point for my own healing work. So it's sort of the silver lining in any crisis, that I was able to see that I could be of even more powerful influence in the community.
And I think that's so often the case. We never want to learn that way, but we always do, is, that way that our struggles become our wisdom. But I see so much how you were from all your work with cancer patients and healing, that you were uniquely suited to get back up, just yourself, and then to be able to bring people into this deep wisdom. And I think that's something we've been talking about, you and I, a lot about, there's wisdom and then there's healing. But what you found is that there's this intersection about healing wisdom. And I'd love for you to share a little bit more about how you began to just see that there's this natural flow of that when people are supported, connected. I don't know. I think it's profound. So say a little more.
Yeah, I definitely feel that growing even more so being connected with the InStory group. There's a process I noticed in the cancer help programs that we did with the circles, that something in the moment happens when you are deeply listening to not only somebody else telling their story and what they're going through, but also tapping into that quietness. You could call it meditation, or a process that's going inside and really trusting there is an inner wisdom we all have. And each person is unique, like a snowflake or something unique in the universe that's never going to be expressed again in the same way. So we each inhabit that incredible uniqueness that I realized not only working with people with cancer, but certainly coming through the fire, and then being involved in InStory, that there's this incredible, miraculous process we all can tap into, that if we give that deep listening to ourselves and to others, something emerges that wasn't there before, that we were unaware of, that comes to the surface. And that's really exciting for me to work with that kind of energy of group process and with someone. So there's a circle of two when I'm working with somebody individually, and there's a circle of many, and there's our own circle of one when we go deep inside. So there's all these circles that are ancient symbol of what is really powerful for us to tap into.
It makes me think about how, in some weird ways, our American cultural focus on the individual has oddly made us lose, or at least for a while, lose a sense of that even my inner work, if I'm connected to God, spirit, soul, there is this circle of connection. And and maybe you can talk about, because I think what we're seeing a lot is this incredible disconnection.
Yeah, I think so. And I think there's just been such an outward focus, and we can call it ego, or sometimes it's a neurotic ego, or sometimes it's just we're so on the surface level. We're concerned with the daily activities and things that pull us outside of ourselves, and we kind of distrusted going inside. Sometimes, it was a feeling of we couldn't trust ourselves, or it was a survival mechanism to be shut down, that the things we were feeling we weren't allowed to express. And I think that's where, it's powerful to reconnect with that, that side or aspect of myself that I shut down as a child, that now I say, wow, that is actually one of the keys to tapping into our wisdom, our own individual wisdom within. So you can call it the soul, the higher self, the spirit, Holy Spirit, however you want to say, God spark, whatever is connecting us to this grounded experience. I know some people interchange spirit and soul, and I never quite know exactly what words to say, but it is that side of ourselves, like you said, that is a circle within to a higher self, or a higher connection that we all are part of. So it's a disconnect that I think was in different cultures, but this one in particular in America, I think we really lost that in how we were conditioned. And we're just now, through things like your InStory or my healing circles, we're tapping back into that is so needed. People are so ready, they're hungry for that.
I completely agree with you so much. And I love how this keeps coming out over and over in every conversation I have, in the sense that we inherently knew this as kids. And then the culture didn't support it. Our parents, they did the best they could, but they didn't know. or maybe I know your mother's extraordinary, so like she was fine, but then your father he didn't know he didn't know how to receive that. And so I share just a little bit more about sort of your experience of who you were and what you knew to be true when you were little, and what happened when you expressed that. Because I think it's important for the listeners to hear these stories, so you as a listener feel brave to share yours.
Yes, definitely. As a child, it wasn't until retrospect as an adult I could put it in words, but I was really an angry baby. I came in angry and upset, and I believe now I was tapping into the fears and the insecurities of the people around me. My mother being a young mother, my father not knowing how to be a father, all of the grandparents around me that were also not ready to take on grandparenting. And I think just the environment was unsafe. My parents didn't have a lot of money. My mother didn't know where how the bills would get paid. I think all of that opened me to taking and absorbing that, and also just being angry that I couldn't trust the people around me to take care of me. I did feel that with my mother, and that was a bond we shared, but I really felt insecure when she'd have grandparents watch me or my father. So I know that at about age 7, that somehow I learned by then, I wasn't allowed to share those feelings of anger or upset, and it wasn't okay for survival mode. So I went into the opposite. I went into people pleasing and saying the things that people expected me to say to get the results I wanted. So I realized that that way of feeling and not sure what that meant, and the way the world wanted me to be were two different things.
I think that's so common, and we just didn't understand why. I mean, I remember the same thing. Okay, I just have to make my mother happy to make sure I can get my needs met. And now we have new glasses, so to speak, for looking back. Like, we didn't understand this trait called empath or highly sensitive person that turns out like 20-ish% of the population have it, and it's a very high level but normal way of being for 20% of the population, and it's a gift. And now we're going, oh, look at that, I'm so good at this and I can do this, and now it's good. But we have a lot of that old baggage.
Right, we do. And I think it takes a lot in a person's awareness to catch those little moments that you need to listen within, and often they get overlooked. Like we've often done in process in the InStory way, is to catch those moments where an image or a metaphor or feeling comes up, and maybe we just completely overlook it. And it does take that sharing in a group to see each other, and to do it self-reflectively. It does take a lot of practice. It's like building that muscle up again. Whereas a kid, it's just natural. You're still connected. And I always say to a parent that has a child around 4, I say, what does your child say? Because they are still connected and they have the words to say it. And I remember my son fighting with my mother. She was often helping me raise my son, and she always wanted him to wear a sweater. And he says, you're not in charge of my weather. And I thought, wow, I would never have thought of saying it that way. I wish I was that brilliant at that age.
What a great line.
So I think the kids today that have parents in tune with that, and my mother did have a level of awareness and still connected to her deeper soul and her wisdom inside, that she was able to hold that space with me in a big way. And even when I was angry and acting out, and the teachers were saying, put this kid on Ritalin, my mother said, no, she's just hyperactive. She needs to go and run on the playground. She was really wise beyond her years, thank goodness. And now I think of my son, got both my mother and I raising him, and he's so in tune with saying certain things that just completely blow my mind. And I think it's because he didn't get that disconnect. We fostered that in him, and it's exciting because we're all kind of learning at the same time. I always say this to my mother, it's just now at this time that we all are getting it. For whatever reason, we all have these things available now that weren't available back then. It wasn't safe, or it wasn't, like you say, our parents did the best they could with what they had. if they were aware. And my mother was beyond her years and conditioned to not feel this way, but she was a rebel. And I'm grateful for that because, you know, I gained from her ability to take a lot of risks. And now I feel like we're all at this level to explore this together. And so I can have conversations with my mother and my son. So we're talking 3 generations of us all for the first time having these new awarenesses that weren't available before. At least that's my interpretation.
Okay, so we're gonna have to go there. Like because I know your mother and I know you, and I know that you and your mother and your son are building a vision. And I know you also work, you know, do deep healing work with individuals. But I can't help it. I want you to say a little bit of that vision.
Sure, absolutely.
Because it's come up and it's so rare, and you're such a good example. Like your mother's such a wondrous human, and the fact that she was able to sort of stay expanded, help you grow expanded, and then you help your son grow expanded, and now all 3 of you have this calling.
Yes.
So maybe say a little bit about what that is, because it's so rare and profound.
It is, and it's a collaboration. Again, we all do better, I think, in a community of people we can work with and trust. And I have that with my son and my mother, which is a rarity that I know a lot of people don't have. And this is an opportunity for generational healing. We want to create a platform or a system and a teaching together, and it will come through my website, healthrevolutiontraining.com, that is growing. Right now it's in its baby stages, but we really are excited to have an interactive platform. And a lot of it is our wisdom from where each of us have come from. My mother's come from the financial side of life more than the artistic side. So she's learning and growing in her artistic side to bring that out more. And I've come from the healing, the health and wellness side, and I'm learning more about organizing and financial. So we're kind of bridging some gaps, and my son wants to help really foster his leadership skills to help the youth in the area. A lot of young people, and he's 18, didn't learn a lot in high school on how to be in the world. And so a lot of skills we want to focus on the young people. But then as we are talking about that, a lot of adults said that they didn't learn that either. So they want to learn. So we have this ability to kind of bridge some gaps or fill in some information and support that we didn't receive before. And it really started a long time ago. We talked about, my mother and I would talk about this, and I ended up doing a paper in college in my creative writing course on the different bodies that we have, that where do we find balance or where are we out of balance. So it's not just the physical body, but the emotional body and the mental body, the spiritual. And I add our environment and our finances. A lot of people have money stories that limit them. A lot of people have relationship stories that limit them. So it's like our bodies are not just our physical body. It comes out into, you know, kind of like people talk about auras or chakras, but you know, our whole kind of sphere of influence is quite bigger or larger than we first think about as our own body. And so I think as empaths or highly sensitive people, we might tune into people. As my son's girlfriend says, you know, I have to sometimes tell people to get out of my bubble. I think, wow, she learned that. I wish I had that skill back then, you know, that sometimes we allow people into our space that doesn't feel right, and yet we don't have those skills to know what to do about it. So a lot of this is going to come up between the gifts that we all have to share, but in the aspect of my son and my mother and I'm excited that we have a collaboration that's going to grow quite powerfully, because we're all such aware beings in our own self. And then it just gets growing, like how you and I talk so easily. It's like when it clicks together, we grow exponentially when we can bring that up to the surface and have people to relate with on this level. So stay tuned. More is coming.
No, 100%. And look, when people get your free gift about wisdom healing, they're going to get into your database and they'll be able to go to your site on Health Revolution. Is it just healthrevolution.com?
I added the training, healthrevolutiontraining.com, because it was more of a training on how people can really start their own revolution inside. And that's really what I came up with.
And what I really think is so powerful here for people watching is that this is a 3-generational empowerment. And that's why it really is a revolution, because that is not, we don't usually see the young person, the parent, and the grandparent all working together. And it's a big hopefulness for our culture, for our world, to have, you know, for us who are already in the older generation, like I'm in your mother's generation, to see your son wanting to take leadership. So it's very inspiring. And that is part of why it's not just healing, it's a health revolution. Because and what you said also about all these different bodies, like it's not just health of the physical body, but that mental, emotional. You know, I think that's why we talked about this whole concept that has wisdom and healing, because it's raising consciousness about that. So tell us a little bit more about what happens when someone hits these devastating places, and what have you seen that happens when people tap into this wisdom, into these healing energy circles, into this higher awareness?
Well, on my one-on-one sessions with people, it's really, I don't know if it's the intuitive side. I don't know what it is. It's that kind of other senses that we get shut down as children, but we have them, and some people more than others in different areas. And for me, I definitely pick up on people's illness or pain, or when they're going through a crisis, that I automatically want to start asking them deeper questions. And some of what comes up, that's probably the most deepest question, that certainly people that have cancer, people that have had a lot of injuries or problems, and the fire is a different scenario, but the aftermath is, you know, how strong is your will to live? And a lot of people want to give up, you know, that's what they have to get in touch with. So I put that on the spiritual level of, where is your will to live? And some people, it's just a no-brainer. They really are very attached to being here. And so their problems might be more emotional, that they have to work on an emotional level. And it's not just physical, if they're in physical pain, but they have to look at, are they holding in anger? Are they angry and upset about their life or their mate or their job? And so it might manifest in that way. But pretty much each person has their own getting in touch with what is the root cause. And some people, I can tell right away, don't want to go that deep. So I have to back off, you know, and that's where sometimes being confronted that clearly is not the way to go. And so a lot of times I have to back off and just really deeply listen and offer a grounding and a relaxation. And I really believe when people are in a relaxed state, they're in that in-between place between waking and sleeping, and they're so relaxed. It's what hypnotists say is that suggestive place. And when we can really tap into that and create a safety and a trust within ourselves, then the healing just starts to happen. I believe we're already wired for that. And that deep sense of relaxation and trust, when you can tap into that, and there are many different techniques and ways to do that, is really powerful. That it's an innate wisdom inside, that I don't have to really do anything, but I'm allowing and supporting and facilitating a person to trust themselves. And I think that's the beauty we all give if we're healers. It's not me healing, it's really helping that person heal themselves.
You know, that's a big part of this work for a lot of us, is that it's the combination of, yes, I have unique gifts and I'm a vessel. And, you know, we've talked about, you and I and many others, about how it takes a big work to be able to charge money for empathic, intuitive, sensitive, like these deep gifts, because we don't have them because we like only trained. I mean, we've all trained in different ways, but our gifts are gifts, meaning they're like just how we are, our extraordinariness. So then we're often going to say, then people say, well, that's just how I am. Right? If I haven't suffered to create it, it can't have value. It's like, So, and so this is a big work of really us trusting that the value of this kind of channeled experience, this kind of flow experience. And you said it, like, for the person who's healing, to trust that. And then for us as the teachers, coaches, healers, guides, we have to trust the value of this. And I think it's happening. Like, we're taking things up to another level. I don't know. Do you have a sense about that? What's your experience with that?
Yeah, I definitely do. I think a lot of things are coming to the surface that are more available and tangible that weren't there before. And I think it's a lot of people's frustration with our medical care, our state of politics, our awareness that somehow we have not been able to take care of ourselves properly or our society properly with the challenges we're up against. And so what do we do? And I think it's going to be a grassroots movement. That's kind of what I thought of at times. There's got to be an American revolution again, right? But what kind? And I think it's the inner revolution. We have to start with ourselves, right? It's always, you got to put that oxygen mask on yourself. You got to start with yourself and really be there present with whatever is without judgment. And so we hear about that with different spiritual teachers and examples in the past, but we really have to be that change we want to see in the world, as we've seen that quotation in places. And I think that's the message that I keep getting is the more we can trust ourselves in areas that we feel are working, we can go into those scary places and kind of explore that. It does help to go there together. And I think these kinds of platforms are valuable right now, that whatever is drawing you to listen to me or listen to you or on read a book, or all these signs are being given right now that we have more access to. And the internet is a blessing. A lot of it can be, a lot of crap out there, but, pay attention to what's grabbing your interest and paying attention to following that kind of thread. And I think that's what led me to you. So I think that's the way we are connecting, and the internet is powerful in that way.
Mm-hmm. It is, and it's really us bringing this light into this realm. And I think as we tap into this inner wisdom that you're so connected to, and we're healed, we don't feel so scared. And then we're not so judgmental of each other. And then we're not calling each other names and, freaking out. We're able to, I'm whole. Like, and all of a sudden then I don't need you to agree with me. I don't need to please you. I can have, because big part of what I want people to have a say is because I believe we have something to say, and that the world needs this deep wisdom. So I just feel so inspired by you, Elizabeth, and by the way that you have not let something so devastating knock you down. Like, I mean, it's not that it didn't hurt and it wasn't devastating and all of that, but you turned around and to make a difference for others. And it's really beautiful. And what I know is that anyone listening, if you have been knocked down and you connect with Elizabeth, you will be led to tap into this very powerful healing wisdom that will allow you to get back up. So that leads me to just share a little bit about how people can stay connected with you.
Yes, I would love for people to take me up on the free gifts I'm offering today, during this series. And it would be really wonderful to have a one-on-one with whoever is interested in reaching out that way. But I'm also going to offer a PDF file of some of the wisdom teaching through the wisdom healing processes that I've gone through, and how to tap into that. And I hope that you'll take me up on some of these wonderful gifts that come through me that I'm going to offer to you. And as well as just listening to these incredible interviews are just so helpful. But I would love for you to check out, over time it's going to evolve, but the website, healthrevolutiontraining.com, as well as just reaching out through my email. And so if you can just, tap on the free gift wherever that's showing up on the,
Just be on the page here, right? Right, and also we're going to have the Facebook group from the InStory
right.
Show, so
I can
we'll be able to
paste
connect
it
with you
there.
in the Facebook group from the show. And I would love also anybody who's in the grandparent, parent, grandchild realm and is interested in talking to her about that more. I just think that's a super cool, interesting realm, and another place where I think there's a lot of healing wisdom that that Elizabeth and her family are bringing into the world. So it's a part of my passion for bringing this out in the world and bringing our voices out. And I hope all of you who are listening are going to feel encouraged to share your stories. So Elizabeth, leave us with like one last thought before we wrap up about just what's important to you, what's valuable, just a few last words of inspiration.
Sure. I really want to invite people to tap into, what's feeling right for them. And I really had to get off of my own attachment to what I want a person to, how it looks to me, what healing is. And I know working with people with cancer really opened that door for me on what healing really is. Because sometimes people don't want to be here that long. Maybe that's their ticket out of here. And healing for them was getting clear with being at peace with where they were at in their life and feeling complete with, where they had reached and where I wanted them to get better and live a long, long time. There's, some health products that I love to use. There's meditations, there's, body work, there's all kinds of things that bring up the life force in people to help them, but some people are ready to leave. And I had to realize my idea of healing was not where this person was coming from. And so I had to back way off in what healing looks like. And I think not to say that I was okay with saying goodbye to some people, but I had to realize that their healing path looked different. And I know when my mother was taking care of my grandmother when she was dying, I said to my mom, this is generational healing. If you can talk to her about certain things that you felt upset about in your life and never had a chance to say it now while she's still in her body, And they had an incredible healing at the end. And my grandmother had a stroke and couldn't talk that much, but my mother was able to say things, and my grandmother squeezed her hand and they both cried. And I thought, that freed me up to say a lot to my mother, that she got in touch with those feelings and said them to her mother. And if she had just put her in a home and not spent that time with her, she would have missed out on that precious last year that my grandmother was really, really struggling. I mean, my mother was there for 3 years, but that last year was crucial for them to heal. So I think that what healing looks like to the outside, isn't necessarily true. And it really was that inner healing that they both tapped into that I encourage you to say, don't pay attention to the outside world on what we think healing is, So I'd love a future conversation with any of you about that. I'm excited for you that you found us here, because I think there's a lot of things to share in this community. And I look forward to posting more on the Facebook page.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Elizabeth, and everybody listening. Be brave, show up in the Facebook group. And as I always say in farewell, remember to go out in the world, share your story, live your purpose, and be a blessing. Bye, folks.